The Digital Circles podcast, giving a voice to Northern Ireland's business network, brought to you by private label people, with your host, Paul Mooney.
Welcome to the Digital Circles podcast. Today's guest is one that is a well-known name in local sport. Through his career in football, Chris Morgan experienced multiple levels of success. However, Chris realised early on that he needed to forge a career outside of football. His company, Clubsport NI, has grown and become an established sportswear distributor throughout the island of Ireland. Chris chats to us about his business and some recent changes that will take the company into other sportswear supplies beyond football. Chris, how are you doing?
Good, feeling good.
Good stuff. I thank you for coming in. I know you're busy. I should start by saying you're a famous name within footballing circles, but you're here to talk to us about your business today because I find that just as impressive. Actually, you had a great footballing career, but you've actually had a great career in business. So I was going to ask you how it all really came about.
Interesting that you said a great career in business. It's funny how it might look on the outside. Very small, but a micro business. There's the reality of it, and I think any business that lasts, that goes across a period of years is a success story. I'm talking about anybody in business because it can be really challenging. Running a small business, there's so many aspects and facets of it that are challenging. And when I kind of fell into it to a large degree. It was probably I'm not quite sure how to say it. I had been working. I worked for a long period for O'Neill's Sportswear. Yeah. Jumped out of that and made a move. Was approached by a consultancy company who worked in sports development and community development and all this type of thing. And I was attracted to it, but very quickly realised it was a bad move for lots of reasons. So we actually, Clubsport NI was actually born out of that old business.
Okay.
So it was an exit strategy for me, very clear in my head, and that there was an opportunity to do something within that business structure, but probably, and in the initial stage, didn't necessarily think that I would pull it out of that. Mm-hmm. But very early on within Clubsport, realised that I wanted to drive this myself. And that's kind of where it came from. I think that's what you asked me. How did it start?
Yeah. So whilst you were playing football, you were working within that sort of business, that industry, the sports industry.
My early days of playing, I was a student. Okay. Finished up, left university when I was still playing at Linfield. Got offered a job. Worked for the Boys Brigade in sports development for 8 months. It was a part-time role. It was my first job out of university. It was really poorly paid. It was, you were effectively trying to build a sports development strategy in a volunteer-led organisation, and no budget and variety of things, and no experience, no real knowledge, sort of like going into a room and turning the lights off and trying to find your way out. Okay. And then had an opportunity to go to play football in New Zealand at the end of that football season. So I took that, left the job, went with my wife now, who was then my girlfriend, and we went to New Zealand for 3 or 4 months. I played football there, and when I came back, within about 2 or 3 days of coming back, a fella that was working for O'Neill's contacted me and said, would you be interested in coming to work here? We're looking for somebody to sell football product. O'Neill's, are predominantly a GAA brand. They do, they do crossover, and probably more so now are crossing more into other sports, and arguably did then too. But they wanted somebody to try and develop their football business.
Okay, makes sense.
And my background, I suppose. So I got offered a job, went and met a couple of people, was offered a job, started working there. Very quickly they moved me into retail, so I managed retail accounts, and it was there was no real strategy there in terms of managing retail. It was kind of totally ad hoc. There were some people they had an office in Dublin. There was manufacturing happening in Strabane. So the sales office, the main head office was in Dublin, and a lot of the accounts that were in I looked after those that were in the north. Some of them would buy through Dublin. Some of them would buy through Strabane. It was just basically, it was all over the place. And then there was also a little bit of there wasn't a great level of trust between the retailer and the brand. They wanted the product, but O'Neill's kind of wore all hats. So they went and they had their own retail operation. They wanted to sell to retail. They looked after sort of that club business. Retailers wanted to look after clubs to bring people through their doors and so on. So it was a bit messy anyway. So I went in there, worked for 10 years at O'Neill's, and kind of then developed a little bit of an understanding of, it was all in sales, so it was relationship building as much as anything, because the relationship between the retailer and the company was largely broken because there was mistrust for a variety of reasons. So and it kind of around that time was where the commercialism around county GAA stuff started to really take hold. In the initial stage, you would be thinking you're selling replica shirts. The first year I was actually in that role, Armagh won in All Ireland, and I was then going into retailers, and they would literally buy anything that was orange. So it was really, you were then trying to manage. You were working with factory who were manufacturing, and it was like the loaves and the fishes. I want 1,000, I can give you 10, sort of thing. And it kind of just opened my eyes to that sportswear industry in terms of what could sell, what did sell, and it that was that initial stage, and as I said, I was there for 10 years and just developed a bit of an understanding of how that whole sort of market piece works.
Okay, well, it was a good grounding. Obviously, what it also did was allow you to talk to people about sportswear and then make contacts, and I suppose that led you into Clubsport NI, and you had those contacts set up, and it was not an easy transition, but it was a natural transition into that.
What started the sportswear industry in terms of retail, I could see changing in that period. If you look now, there's no. I was looking after independents. So if you think about independent sports shops, how many are there now? If you go into little towns around the country, there would have been sports shops all over the place. Now it's JD, it's
right.
Sports Direct. So the independent guy was getting squeezed. The big brands didn't really want to deal with the independents either, because why take a small order from a wee guy and have lots of these wee orders whenever you can just go to big groups and buy, who spend lots, and so I could see the change happening. I could also see the change happening from team sport was becoming way more important. People were buying their local sports club, spending their money on who they were playing for. So that market was becoming something that previously hadn't really been there. So they're spending their money there. So I could see the emergence of team sport within the sportswear market. And the guys that I was working with, those people that were reacting, their business was surviving. The people that were doing what they'd always done, their doors are closed now. That's the reality, because the big guys, if your business and you were small independent was built on selling football replica, footwear and whatever else, well, you were suddenly getting squeezed out of it because the big brands weren't interested in you any longer. Yeah. You had to then be a little bit more niche, look for maybe up and coming brands that were going to be popular, or maybe trying to go into that teamwear market and see, can you get club business coming through your retail outlet. So I could just see the shift in pattern, and it wasn't that was just something that was observing. I wasn't necessarily thinking I'm gonna go and do this. Albeit it did start to develop some links and some contacts with some of those bigger brands in the teamwear sector, because a friend of mine decided he wanted to set up a teamwear business, and I gave him a little bit of a helping hand, opened a few doors for him. I'm going back here to about 2007 here. and developed made contact with a chap within Nike through a friend of mine here who worked for Nike, Ali McComb, who played football in the Irish League. I went to uni with Ali. He finished uni, went and worked for Nike, had some brilliant jobs at Nike. He's back living here now, having lived all over. He lived in England for a long time. He lived in Amsterdam. So he's now back. I bumped into the Super Cup last year. So he had introduced me to a guy at Nike who I then, fast forward 10 years or whatever it was, no, not 10 years, 5 maybe, that whenever I then just looked at setting up Clubsport, I needed this guy to open a door for me. A guy within Nike, a chap called Chris Donaghy. Really good guy. He still works within Nike, but I picked the phone up to him and said, what's your thoughts on this here? I have a club that are willing to come with us. Will you give me an account? And he was like, we're closing accounts at the minute. We're trying to downsize. But he said, yeah, okay, let's do it and see how we go. Okay.
Well, it was your point of contact, Ali. I'm sure he probably wouldn't have allowed you in the doors if it hadn't been for Ali. So you've got Ali to thank for that one. But
and that football does that. My life has kind of been immersed in football, and everything of at every turn, my business is in football. I've worked through the media because of football. It's just so many, and that sort of relationship with Ali, that friendship, opened that first door, and then allowed opened the door for somebody else. But then the next time around, I had developed that contact with Chris at Nike.
Let's face it, we're all winners. For your chance to win fantastic prizes from our rolling monthly competition, just head on over to digitalcircles.click/give or follow the link in the description.
It was changing, that demand for different types of products. It used to be, whether it was a football team or a GAA team, rugby team years ago, they would have turned up and they would have been given a shirt, and they would have turned up in their jeans and their t-shirt or whatever it was on a match day, whereas it started becoming the club wants tracksuits. There was a fundraising element to that. Clubs were going out and trying to get money to be able to purchase tracksuits and things too, so that wasn't easy for them to do, but it got them more into their communities, and then in playing for amateur league clubs, for instance, lots of guys were getting more satisfaction, and they were wearing the club badge on their chest, on their tracksuit. They were going down to the bar afterwards for a pint, maybe after the game, and wearing their club gear. And so you could see that shift, and you could see it, and you must have looked at it and said, okay, it's not just football jerseys anymore now, it's tracksuits, it could be hats, beanies. You see people wearing beanies all the time now with club badges on them, no matter what team it is. And it's a good thing. And now that's going into youth football as well. Youth football, the kids all want the tracksuits and they all want the best boots. And so Clubsport NI, I take it you started with all that in your mind. It was, okay, so we're going to supply shirts, tracksuits, boots as well. Did boots come into it early on, or was that later?
We don't really have the distribution piece there for footwear.
Okay.
We can access it, but it's challenging. I mean, we've tried to do a little bit through the PFA and help the PFA here, and boots are it's a different buying model. I mean, you're buying them 6-9 months in advance. They're ever changing. So again, if you look now, where do you go and buy a pair of boots? It's really difficult. Yeah. It's all driven. It's nearly all .com stuff. Yeah. It's changed massively. You can't really go and buy top end boots. So if you're a player that wants to spend £250 on a pair of boots, you're buying them online. You're not really going into a shop. That brings its own challenges. Footwear. Again, we've dipped our toe. We try to help at times where we can do it, but it's really challenging. Yeah. The first thing you do when you buy a pair of shoes or boots is you want to put them on, try to fit what they're like. They don't fit, they don't feel good. If you bought them online, by the time they arrive, it's kind of like
if you're a player, you might want them for the game the next day, or so it's, if you're buying them online, you have to wait a wee while. So there's a gap in the market there, but as you say, it's a very difficult one.
But it's nobody's going to drive into that gap because it's closed. I mean, if you want to buy a pair of boots, you're going online to buy them. There's not really a retailer, certainly here, that you can go and do it with. So it's hard. So we we do a little bit in it, but everything else that you talked about, yes, that's where, you know, I mean, you've sportswear has changed massively, you know, in terms of, it's a very generic term, but you associate sportswear with brands, you know, like, you know, Nike, we're heavily involved in Nike, but there's millions of brands we talk about. But if you walk into Next or Marks and Spencer's or anywhere, they've got sportswear.
Of course.
You know, it's now becoming, it's lifestyle clothing. You know, it's not, now people can go to work and wear, you know, effectively sportswear.
Yeah.
You know, so all of these huge organisations have recognised that, and people are spending their money. And I mean, again, if you've X amount of money that you're spending in terms of, you know, your own personal situation, and you're buying at your local club hoodie, excuse me, for example, well, you're not just wearing that when you go to football on Saturday, you're wearing it during the week. It becomes part of your wardrobe as such, you know. So we've tried to, you know, capitalise on that, being blunt.
You've done that well. For instance, when somebody gets in touch with yourself or Clubsport NI, would that normally be a club or a school? Do you work with schools as well? Is it mainly just clubs?
Yeah, we do. We have some some schools that we work with. Schoolwork can be slightly more challenging because there's a bespoke element to it. Our main brand that we work with is Nike, and it's slightly more challenging to get into the bespoke aspect. On a bespoke, I'm talking, you know, they want it to be, okay, can that be black with, I need gold on there and I need all these things. Ultimately, you know, that's harder to do. But yeah, we do work with some schools, and we are Nike's country partner for Ireland. That's what they would term us as. So that bit, if people want to buy Nike here, team sports, yeah, they can go buy it online. There's only about 10 accounts in the whole of the UK and Ireland. We're the only one in Ireland. So if you want to deal with people, you're coming to us. Okay. Of course, you can then do it online as well.
Okay. And whenever they do come to you and say, okay, we want a whole team kitted out and we want tracksuits, we want shirts, how do you take it from there? Do you just give them an order form, or do you send them online onto your website? Or
yeah, generally they're looking at digital images and deciding, okay, this is what we're looking at. You then go through the process of maybe applying their club badge, and you send them through, you know, design spec and things like that, and they approve it. There's maybe sponsors involved, a variety of things. I don't deal with that end of things too much. You know, we've got account managers that'll do that, it's, you know, make a fairly quick decision based on, yes, I like it, and B, I like the price, maybe.
Yeah. And I noticed you've grown the business, and as you say, you distribute now to the whole of Ireland. I think originally it was just the north, was it?
Yeah, I mean, and again, Nike kind of drove us down that road of being all Ireland. They spoke to me. I'm trying to remember what year it was. Maybe about 2019, something like that, 2018. About looking at all Ireland. It was something that probably I wasn't necessarily mad keen on, because we were still building the business here. So to go into another territory requires investment, and to be fair, they came up with ways to help with that. But it's really challenging to then have, you know, another territory that you're trying to look after, and it's getting people. So yeah, we did have sales office and a salesperson in just outside Dublin for a number of years. That's recently changed, but there are huge changes going on in the business as we stand. We're actually right now in the middle of merging the business with a company in England, called Kit King. So they're effectively buying our business here. And we are, you know, the territory of Ireland is an area of real interest, you know, and they have a huge infrastructure, much bigger than we are, better processes, lots of things that will help develop our business, and the island of Ireland is of real interest, and also we've been so heavily focused on football. Always had the mindset of being really good at one thing. I'm not sure we are really good, but you know that's the rationale. Well, we're okay. You know, we've had reasonable client list. So, but to diversify into other sports is more challenging to do. Also from a product point of view. But this relationship now that we're developing with Kit King will allow us to have a more multi-sport approach. There's a Nike teamwear is heavily focused on football. Okay. They have not a subsidiary company, but there's another company that works through that's a relationship with Nike that offer the multi-sport approach. So and that's now been opened up to us. So we're looking at all those other sports that previously we would have had a challenge to do, rugby and basketball and hockey and netball and all the other sports that we have never really tapped into. That's now on the agenda, which is a big change.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. And whenever there's a big change when you start just football. Now you've got to accumulate all those other sports. There's a lot of pressure there, but with a company like Kit King, I'm sure they're well used to that. Whenever you set up the company, was it in the back of your mind that maybe someday I can grow this and then I can sell it to a bigger organisation? Some businesses do set up like that, where they think, right, let's build a company in the view to selling it down the line. And other people just say, no, what, this is my business, I'm going to work in it, and they don't even think like that.
In that initial stage, this was I need to do something here because the job I'm in is going nowhere, and I've just left a job and I can't. I didn't want to jump straight back out and look for something else. So that decision to leave O'Neill's was the right one at the time, because it'd been there 10 years, and I think part of the thing is that when you're playing at a decent level, it's kind of hard to have certainly it would be hard to run your own business because you invest so much time and energy and emotional energy into it. I think if you're playing at a decent level, you're investing all the same sorts of things, time and energy and emotional sort of that space that it takes up. So I think it would be really challenging to do both. So the end of my playing days kind of, and this is a by the by, it wasn't definitely not planned, but I changed jobs, recognised I was in the wrong place, and reacted to it. But there was no great plan. It was a strategy of I need to scrap to get out of this here. Okay. So it was a bit of, I guess, survival mode. Recognise the opportunity where my skill set sat with sportswear and developing relationships using the football piece, and we built the business from nothing, from scrapping and just moved it out where I was the sole owner of it then, but no thought process of where this was going to be in a year. It was like, let's survive, let's get out of year 1, year 2, year 3, and we recently went past 10 years as a business, and to survive, I had an element there of pride in that it didn't fall apart. And because it's not easy. We're in an industry where it's heavily margin driven. You're always at the beck and call of somebody telling you you're doing it wrong and this is not good, and it's very your customer base is. You can use the old 80-20 when it comes to business, and there's a bit of that. But you're always at the beck and call of a customer deciding, right, we're going somewhere else. Okay. We have elements of our business that will be contracted, and that gets you X amount of turnover in the year, and then you're looking at where are we bringing the rest of this in from, and people are will jump. They're with you today and they're going tomorrow. A lot of that then comes, you want to build relationships with people that they are willing to stick with you through the long piece. But no, I had no designs in that. It kind of the business changing hands has been one of those things it's been a year-long process in terms of talking to Kit King, and it's funny. I probably in the last 2 or 3 years have talked more to my wife about the business, because if I had told her some of the things in the early days, I think she would be 6 feet under by now. Whereas, there's when there's always challenges in running a small business, and things like just managing your cash and risk and debt and stress and all of these things that I probably managed by not talking about it, which probably wasn't the best thing to do, but it kind of, I probably protected her to some degree of some of the things that you probably wouldn't want her to be worried about. I could deal with that. That was kind of one of those things. And that maybe that resilience piece probably comes from playing football, where people, you're fair game for people to have a pop at you.
Yeah.
But yeah, in the last couple of years, I've talked to her an awful lot more about the things that are going wrong, and the things that I didn't tell her that she was like, she was quite glad I didn't tell her. So that change has happened in the last year, and we got a dog about 3.5 years ago. So we've a Sunday morning ritual of walking the dog at Shaw's Bridge, and this is kind of almost like being a therapy session for both of us. And I've talked to her about the business, and about a year ago I started to talk about. I did the first part of my A license last year, and the second part of it there recently. And I started talking about having an interest in doing more things in and around football. I've coached at grassroots football for a long time, and just had that desire to do other things with my life. And very quickly, within a few weeks of us starting to have this conversation on a Sunday morning, I was introduced to Dips Patel from Kit King, and he's in acquisition mode and wants to take over the world in sportswear. And he's a great guy. He's really energetic, and I've learned an awful lot with having conversations with him over the past year.
Don't forget, for your chance to win fantastic prizes from our rolling monthly competition, just head on over to digitalcircles.click/give or follow the link in the description.
Maybe it was starting to creep into your mind about, what you might do in the future with Clubsport NI, and now that takes it on to another level, which is great for you because you started it, and I take it you're probably still going to be involved in some way for the next while.
Yeah, I will be, and it was the introduction to Dips was really one of those things that we got each other we connected on an emotional level, which was really important. I didn't want to hand this over to somebody who we weren't of a like mind.
Yeah.
And we very much were. He's got loads of experience in this industry, so it helped elevate, and that was one of the things that there was always, I kind of felt a little bit held back to certain degrees, and it's hard to make that jump, and it's hard to change your business, and there's lots of things you want to do, but the reality is you're just doing what you always do. We've been able to see a level of change coming in now. And
if I can ask you this, as you talk about small business at the start and not really being able to talk to your other half, or your wife at the time, and still now, and it's now you feel comfortable that you can talk about these things because it's in the past and you're in a really strong position now. Do you feel there's enough help out there for small businesses? We've spoken about this recently, and somebody I was talking to just last week said that their best friend runs a business, but he doesn't feel like there's anybody that he can really open up to, and he's the same. He doesn't want to talk to his wife about it because he doesn't want to worry her, and he ended up talking to his local minister, because he couldn't think of anybody else that he could go and sit down to and tell him about the stresses of running a local business.
I think the thing is that there's no manual, there's no learning piece. There's there's theory pieces, but the practical aspect of that is you have to live it and experience it and fail a lot and make mistakes and then be comfortable with the fact that, there would have been a piece that you don't want to say, I'm doing this really badly, and there were times I would have known I'm running this business and I'm making a balls of it, to be honest. Yeah. And you feel that. So there's a little piece there that you probably don't want to admit that you're doing it badly, but you can see you're doing it badly. And having that, I did and do have somebody to talk to quite regularly in terms of being a mentor in business. We're in Saintfield today, and he's actually he's not originally from Saintfield, but I grew up in Saintfield, and he lived behind me, Fraser Evans, and Fraser then was heavily involved in insurance. Was involved in Abbey Insurance. He actually took me to Crusaders whenever I was 18.
Okay.
So he's been a friend for a long time, but he's a successful business person. So I would have picked the phone up and talked to him, and he was really successful at the point. He's a bit older than me, so but he's had success. but he's also had failure, and he would tell you about mistakes that he's made, and you only learn these things as you get a little bit older, and I guess you don't be as hard on yourself when you get older. It is, but it is. There's challenges. I don't know what in terms of where that would exist. I guess it in terms of being able to talk to somebody about it. Doesn't really change anything, but it probably helps to offload some of the stresses for people to say, you know what, I've been through that, and keep the head down.
Absolutely. And now you're in the mentor position where
no, I'm definitely not. Definitely not.
Well, it's fascinating then with somebody like Fraser, because he led you into football in some ways, but then also in business, and it sort of dovetails nicely. In regards to working with Nike, obviously huge organisation, and they help you to grow as well, I assume, by trying to push your boundaries a little bit, trying to push their brand through you. How have you found working with an organisation of that size? You're right. We kind of get taken on a journey with them to a large degree, and again, that probably came from it's people. The different people that have been there in charge of teamwear within Nike in the UK, we fall under that banner or that grouping. They've always been. I've just found them to be really decent. They're into football. They then look about how they look at how many athletes can Nike be on their feet, and this type of thing. So, but I've always found them to be actually just decent people. Not just about support in business, not just about how much money they can make, but actually where there's maybe pieces that you can make a difference. And one of the things that they have a Nike partner club strategy that they run through the English FA, and that's linked to the England contract, obviously, and it's about helping grassroots football, and I'm involved in grassroots football, so I can see that we need help here too. And one of the things that the partner club piece gives to clubs is that it offers them coaching bursary. Okay.
And effectively, there's money. Nike probably it's built into the FA contract where they can help develop coaching. And I spoke to Nike recently about this and said, we could really do with that offering to our clubs here.
Okay.
Something that I was passionate about. Can our grassroots game be better? And they were like, right, okay, let's we'll do that. So they're basically giving money.
Yeah.
They're funding. So we've started to put on. We've had clubs that have had coaches go through their NCCs, their C license, and Nike've paid for it.
Very good.
Okay. And they're not asking really for anything else. They don't. That partner club initiative they run through the English FA is directly linked to the English FA, and through the England contract, and all the huge benefits they get from that. Here, it was just a thing. I said, can you help in any way? So I met John Paul Murray from the IFA and said, do you have capacity? I wasn't sure how many and we haven't, don't get me wrong, we haven't been putting on hundreds and hundreds of coaches, but we've probably had about 60 or 70 coaches in the last year and a half that have benefited from that and have a qualification that Nike have paid for.
That's brilliant. And it's always nice when you come into a big organisation like that and they're willing to help and support, because I suppose they see the greater benefits of it. They help it at grassroots level and it continues on, and their brand is we're recognised, but recognised for good things. Because sometimes big sportswear brands, big brands of any type, get a little bit of stick also. Yeah. So it's nice that they're willing to do that and to make a change. In regards to the future, obviously you've just teamed up with Kick King. You're going to be doing still a little bit with Clubsport NI going forward, I take it?
Yeah. I mean, for the foreseeable, nothing really changes. There's growth aspiration, and probably this partnership now, this change, allows us to look beyond where we're currently at and think more strategically and develop other areas and do lots of other things where micro business, wearing 10 hats, now we can be way more focused. So our sales guys can be way more focused, and we can go and develop more business. So yeah, it's changed, but I mean, for me, I'll still be hanging around.
And just keep me right. It's Nike, or because some people say Nike, but I take it, is it America? It's Nike, isn't it?
Well, it's a Greek thing, Nike.
Okay, there you go. That settles it a bit.
So it is Nike. I mean, nobody's going to hammer you for saying Nike, because it's.
Anytime I've said Nike, somebody's went, what are you saying off for? It's Nike.
Okay,
But
yeah.
there we go. Well, we can take your word on it if we can't take anybody else's. Also with Nike going forward, they must invite you to some nice things as an ambassador, or a partner that they would work with. Do you ever get to go to big events that they would sponsor?
We've had a few. COVID killed a lot of it though. We used to do loads of good things. And yeah, I mean, I remember going to Barcelona, went to Nou Camp, Barcelona, Chelsea, and it's a quarterfinal. I think Barcelona won 3-0. Messi was absolutely amazing to watch. So they bring you to things. We've done a few things like that. I've been to Wembley a few times to games. Amsterdam, I'm trying to think, did we go to a game? But yeah, they would do retailer events, and they would bring it, and just basically. It's I suppose it's a little arm around the shoulder and thank you for the business, and you get out, have a few beers, and then meet people in your sector. Unfortunately, COVID has killed that. We haven't been able to do anything. I think there is talk of they're going to do another one soon. But
Chris, you've obviously had the business now for quite some period of time, as you alluded to earlier. If you have a business for any period of time, you've done rightly. I don't know what the statistics are, but so many businesses aren't there after 2-3 years. So many businesses don't turn a profit in the first few years, and some people can't get beyond that, and that's very understandable. You have, and as you've said yourself, you've been very honest, you said you've made mistakes, and every business person out there has, and lots of business people have maybe had a business that hasn't worked, and they've had to come back and they've learned from that. But you're here now, and it has been successful. When you look back at it, how was the ride? Was there times when you thought we're not going to get through, or were you always pretty confident in the setup that you had?
I'm not sure if I actually ever really thought about, are we going? You just kept going, and he didn't look at it from. I mean, we were having success in terms of every year we would sit down as a business and look at, okay, what's our target for this year, and it would be a financial target, in terms of this is where we're trying to get to, and we always managed to achieve that, so we were that little marker of that. You get to the end of the year and you tick that and you've had success. My accountant would be complaining about things and saying this is, you're here. But, if in the last number of years, he's been happier. So that tells you that things are that level of progress. But accountants are a bit like that. They don't, they're black and white. There's no grey.
Yeah.
It's probably been the people around it. I've had a couple of really, really good people. I mean, my sort of from day dot nearly that has been beside me, a fella Jamie McGovern, who would have played Irish League football, and he's been incredible in terms of just, and he will take on a bigger role as this changes. There's no doubt about that. But I've had good people there, and the people that are there now or have been why it's got to this point. It's I've kind of always had this ideology, I suppose, that the business will be run like a football dressing room.
Okay.
And that if you need to tell somebody, I'm not sure how much we can say here in terms of
just go for it. Just let loose.
If you need to tell somebody who can get their finger out, they're not going to cry their eyes out, and I would be blunt about that and say, listen, I'm not going to labour in this here, and I'm not that type of person too often, but if you need to have hard words with somebody, that will do it, and then we'll forget about it and we'll move on. And if you need to, do likewise to somebody, do it, but don't cry your eyes out. Good football dressing rooms run themselves, and I've always been quite clear to staff that this is how it's going to be. So people that have been in the business have generally been comfortable around football clubs, and you might look and go, is that the right way to do it or is that not? But it's the way I have decided to do it, and rightly or wrongly, you've had a level of success there, and the doors are still open. But that's been the way we've ran it, and I haven't been to use a football sort of analogy, I haven't been like Fergie, where I've give off with people all the time. It's kind of, we'll run it collectively, and okay, I'll maybe make the end decision on something, but we'll decide as a collective where we're going, and we be quite open about that, and I think it's generally been a place that people have reasonably well enjoyed. There's times when it's stressful, when you get into those summer months, when everybody wants and nobody's prepared, and I want yesterday and I'm only ordering tomorrow. The biggest piece that we have is in terms of delivering for people is how well organised they are. Okay. And when they're not organised, we struggle. But it's our fault.
I was going to say, yeah,
and that's hard, and at some point you forget that, you move on from it, and there's loads of things that things have gone wrong and we've made mistakes and we haven't delivered, but there's loads of times where we've went way beyond what we should have been able to do and delivered and moved heaven and earth to make sure that we get our customer what they want, and I always say that we're best whenever the customer is organised, and when they're not, we'll struggle. I think lots of businesses will be like that, especially in our industry, because there's lots of pieces that you don't have control of, and that's one of the things that you certainly see, and you try to then look at your customer base and have them organised.
Well, like any good business, you look after your core customer base, and I'm sure you have clients come back, even maybe right back to the very beginning, and you've looked after them and they've grown used to that relationship, and that they need to be organised too, which helps. But you've done really well, Chris, I have to say, and I know you've had some good support around you, but you've been leading from the front, and you've taken that sporting mentality that you had, and you were a winner and you were used to success, but success through working with great teams and great teams of people, and that's sort of related to the business life. And congratulations, you've done rightly.
Still starting.
Thanks very much, Chris. Thank you.